Zebunisa. Zebunisa is 60 years old. All that Zebunisa is guilty of was that when Abu Salem and his men brought a bag of weapons for Sanjay Dutt, they left it in Zebunisa's house for 2 days. So it's like me going to Manzoor's house, dropping a bag off, coming 2 days later, picking it up and going. Manzoor doesn't open the bag, Zebunisa never opened that bag, but Zebunisa has been indicted under TADA. Whereas Sanjay Dutt was being indicted under the Arms Act. And there was an attempt to save him. And we said, I mean, you cannot do this. The law must be the same. I have ministers in this government who said, it's a bad law. I said, I'm willing to admit to that. That it's a draconian law, it's a bad law. If it's a bad law, they'll let everyone off. But if that is the law, then it doesn't matter whether it's Sanjay Dutt or it's a poor Muslim woman, you must apply the same law. And thanks to the Delca investigation, today Sanjay Dutt is in jail. And I feel no remorse about it, because as a journalist, as a good citizen, as I said, my job is to pursue that justice will be fair, justice be available to all, and justice be pursued by all. I spoke to you about the Indian amnesia, that the amnesia must stop. But I also want to speak to you about the Projector modernity. It's a project that we're all involved in. And modernity is a very, very problematic project. All of you who live in America, all of us who live in India, everywhere in the world today, there is a Projector modernity that has been afoot for the last 50 years. What is the Projector modernity? The Projector modernity is that increasingly, every society will become a melting pot. Every society will become a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multilingual place. In this, there will be an endless quest for identities. There will be the crisis of identities. It is very important that all of us learn to negotiate the modern space. That we learn to understand what is it that we need to do in this project of modernity, in the modern space, that we do not become dangerous people ourselves, that we do not make other people dangerous. And in India, it's going on. India is a very complex country. It's probably the most complex country in the world, far more complex than America. And I can see that these pulling identities, and you can see some of the perversion of these identities. You can saw the kind of way the first speaker on Rakesh's tape was talking about Hinduism. It's a perversion of Hinduism. You know, I'm a Hindu myself. I don't believe what these guys talk about. That isn't Hinduism. There's nothing about Hinduism in what they talk about. It's a perversion. This perversion is being created because the modern societies are today having to contest for space, having identities that contend with each other. In this, the trick that the bigots use is to create the notion of the other. You know, that somebody is declared the other. You know, once you declare somebody the other, then he's outside the pale of being applied to this with the same standards that you apply to yourself. And this, it's what the Nazis did to the Jews, the other. You know, it's what these Hindu killers did to the Muslims. You can hear in the way they talk. So these are not human beings. This is the other. This is somebody else. We have to be careful about this. We have to be careful about declaring anybody the other. You know, we have to try and learn to somehow build the tolerances and the liberalisms that allow us to see other people's points of views and deal with other people in ways that is understanding of their culture. It's very easy to develop voices of anxiety. You know, it's very easy to get anxious about other people. But I think it's a big mistake. Modernity will collapse if we all become anxious about other people around us. If I become anxious that I'm coming to a mosque to speak to a group of Muslims, if Muslims become anxious that they are in a Hindu space, if Christians become anxious about Muslims, we are in trouble. We've seen the misery of this country because Mr. George Bush has been doing stuff like this. It's the wrong thing to do, you know. And we all need to develop a soft voice. I say this to all my friends. Develop a soft voice. We need softer voices. There is too much of shrillness in the modern space. We need a soft voice when we're dealing with other cultures, with other religions, with other people. It's very necessary to kind of find. It's a difficult time. I'm telling you, modernity is a difficult time. The next 100 years are probably going to be the most difficult 100 years in the history of mankind. It's a very important thing that ordinary people also start finding and developing the tools that will help us all negotiate this space. India's crisis is deepening, let me just say that. All of those who come from India, and if there's people from Pakistan here, Pakistan's crisis has already deepened. So, you know, I mean, so things are bad. Things are bad back home. Part of the story is true. India is celebrated all across the world today for its great economic efflorescence, which we are witnessing. That efflorescence is legitimate. It is true that 100 million people in India are today on the fast track to a remarkable global future. But what is also true is that more than 800 million people in India today are living on less than $1 a day. At least 320 million of these people live on less than 30 cents a day. These are people living in abject poverty. The latest statistics show that numbers of the poor are actually rising in 5 of the biggest states of India. This is very, very troubling. I mean, inequality is growing. The crisis of India in many ways is growing. And in this, as this crisis sort of grows, I feel that the responsibility of the privileged, which is people sitting here, people like me, the responsibilities of the privileged will grow. And unless the privileged learn to shoulder their responsibilities, the whole construct will collapse. India, at least, has been created on the basis, on the idea of the social contract. The social contract is a very simple thing. The social contract is that those who have privilege, those who have affluence, those who are from the elite, those who have education, have to give back to society in equal measure. It's a very simple thing. I mean, the men who created the idea of India were all men of great learning and great affluence. Most of them went to universities. Some came to Stanford, some went to Oxford, Cambridge, to Lincoln's Inn, to Columbia University. These were men and women who were very well heeled and came from very privileged backgrounds. But most of them gave up this immense privilege for the greater good. I think now the time has come that a lot more of us again learn that we need to start giving back. I mean, it's becoming incumbent upon us. I'll tell you one of my favorite stories about Jawaharlal Nehru. In 1979, Jawaharlal Nehru came back to India, a young man. He had been to Harrow, he'd been to Cambridge. He comes back to India. He comes back to India and he's immediately captivated by Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, he's just taken up by Mahatma Gandhi and magnetized by him. Jawaharlal Nehru's father, Motilal Nehru, is the richest lawyer in India. You know, his Rolls Royces come straight from England, custom made. His house in Allahabad has a 24-seater dining table, silver cutlery. All the powerful white men of the times dine on Motilal Nehru's table. And Motilal Nehru, whose only son is Jawaharlal, is terrified that his son is becoming so politically engaged. Motilal actually goes and meets Mahatma Gandhi and tells Mahatma Gandhi, I want you to dissuade my son from coming too close to you. And Mahatma Gandhi promises Motilal, he says, I will do that. In any case, Jawaharlal Nehru is not to be deterred. Because Jawaharlal Nehru by that time has had a very seminal experience. A seminal experience that the lady who was talking here spoke about, taking some students and some other people there. Jawaharlal Nehru has come back from Cambridge and one day by mistake he has ended up visiting a village in Uttar Pradesh. And he has been devastated by the scale of poverty of the peasants. He can't believe that that is the scale of poverty that the peasantry of India exists in. And two things have happened. He has not only seen the scale of poverty, he's also seen a kind of generosity of spirit that the peasant still carries within him that he has not seen anywhere else. And immediately he undergoes a kind of complete transformation of the self. He becomes completely committed to the idea of pursuing the well-being of the abject of the abject. And he sees that they also carry, as I said, a generosity of spirit, because when he visits their huts, they all want to feed him and they want to give him tea, though they have nothing themselves. And that's why Jawaharlal Nehru now is not to be convinced either by Motilal Nehru or by Mahatma Gandhi. And Jawaharlal Nehru now starts bringing out a newspaper. He's bringing out a newspaper in which he's daily attacking the British. In 1919, the Jallianwala Bagh tragedy happens. And by 1920, Motilal Nehru is being told by the white man, by the Britishers, that if your son does not stop, we will have no choice but to arrest him. So what does Motilal Nehru do? Every night, Motilal Nehru begins to go into his bedroom, latch his door from inside, and instead of sleeping on his plush four-poster bed, he begins to sleep on the stone floor, beginning to practice what it feels like to sleep on a prison floor. And within 3 weeks, sure enough, Jawaharlal Nehru is arrested by the British, and 3 weeks later, even Motilal Nehru is arrested, and both are behind bars. It's just to tell you that that's the kind of people who shaped and created the idea of India. India was a colonized, feudal, badly damaged nation, and it was rendered overnight into a modern nation. It was done through a lot of sacrifice by high-quality people who enjoyed privilege. I feel that social contract needs fulfilling once again. I think most of us are tied into it, and we need to give back in whatever way we can. I would also tell my friends here who are from India, Muslims from India, that don't make the mistake of getting either ghettoized or into a frame of persecution.